Well, good afternoon to our attendees who I can see slowly rising in the attendee column. It's great to see so many of you here. We're really grateful for you coming to join us and listen to our esteemed panelists. We are going to hold off for another 2 minutes or so, just to allow everyone time to get in and get settled. In the meantime, feel free to say hello to us in the chat. I can see some familiar names in the attendees already. Good afternoon to some of our partners in Malaysia. Thank you for joining us. And good afternoon, Erwin. Once again, good afternoon to our new joiners. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you're joining from. I can see some nice places. Lucky people joining us from Bali. We're very jealous, especially the poor people stuck in London. We are going to start in, I think, 1 minute time. We will begin with our introductions. Okay, so that is 3 minutes past the hour. We have a healthy number of attendees joining us today to listen to our fabulous and esteemed speakers who are joining us from a very diverse region, from India all the way across to Indonesia and Malaysia. And we have our team in London and our team in Bangkok. So thank you very much for taking the time to come and hear them. I am Christopher Fett Worsfold. I am Britannica's head of curriculum and development for the Asia region based in Bangkok. And joining me today to host this fascinating webinar is my good colleague Laurie Ligori from London.
Good afternoon or good morning from London, everyone. We're absolutely delighted that you've joined us, and we know that you will hear a very, very fruitful discussion with our esteemed panelists. I'm the head of curriculum for Britannica Education, and prior to joining Britannica, I was an international educator for 21 years, taking a number of lead roles across the world, including in Asia. So once again, I welcome all of you. So Christopher, if we just go around the screen to introduce our esteemed panelists.
Yes, I'm going to just start in the top left as I can see it. So, Miss Diana, would you please introduce yourself a little bit for us?
Hi everybody, my name is Rudiana and I'm the International Curriculum Coordinator in St. Peter's School, Jakarta.
Thank you very much. Dr. Wan Noor, good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Wan Nur Azmin from SIMIO Raksem. SIMIO stands for Southeast Asia Minister of Education Organization, Regional Education Center for Science and Mathematics.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Patrick Samuel, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Patrick Samuel. I'm the head of program for Cambridge Primary and Secondary Schools as part of UK Global Education based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Nice to meet all of you.
Thank you very much. And from Vietnam, Dr. Min, how are you today?
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Minh Nguyen. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Sercberg Vietnam. So we are a Cambridge international school, and we doing Cambridge integrated with the Vietnamese national curriculum. Very nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And our esteemed panelist from outside SEA is Dr. Manju.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Manju Surendran. I am the Director of Academics for an international curriculum school in Nasik, Maharashtra. We are a Cambridge curriculum pathway school. We offer early years to A levels, and it's been more than 2 decades, 25 years of experience in the national and international curriculum across India.
Thank you. And last but by no means least is Mr. Diedrich Klein.
Hi, everybody. My name is Diedrich Klein. I am based in Kuala Lumpur over at the Alice Smith School. I am the head of education technology and digital well-being there. I'm really happy to be here.
Fabulous. Thank you very much to everyone. So we have an excellent conversation lined up this afternoon. And what we're focusing on is as schools delivering the Cambridge International Curriculum look to deepen student understanding, many are exploring how digital technologies can move learning beyond the limits of traditional textbooks. From AI-powered tools to interactive resources, technology is creating new opportunities and new challenges in teaching, personalization of learning, and developing of higher order thinking skills. This discussion brings together experienced Cambridge school leaders for a practical conversation about how digital technologies are being integrated meaningfully into the classroom. We'll explore what's working in real schools, the challenges educators are facing when adopting new tools, and how leaders are ensuring technology enhances learning rather than simply delivering content. So we're going to start with a question. And this is really, when we talk about going beyond the textbook in Cambridge schools, what does this really mean in practice? And how does it potentially matter now more than ever? I'm going to go in reverse order. So Diedrich, would you like to start us off with some thoughts on that, please?
Give me 1 second. I apologize. My audio cut out just a little bit. Can you make sure I'm answering the question? Can you repeat that question for me one more time?
Of course. So when we talk about going beyond the textbook in Cambridge schools, what does that actually mean in practice? And why does it potentially matter now more than ever?
Got it. That last part cut out, so I'm glad I was able to hear that again. So when we talk about textbooks, we're sort of setting up this notion that there's a certain expectation of what the classroom should look like in a historical perspective of what we predict, right? But unfortunately, the world that textbooks come from is not the world that we now live in. The world that we live in now, there's a lot of eroding of boundaries, not only between sort of your experience in the school versus out of the school, but then the digital world versus the experienced physical world. There's also a lot of lowering of boundaries there. So I believe that a big part of what we need to look at is considering the overlap and the interplay between how students see disciplines, how they see the interaction of math and science and reading and art and PE and all these other things, as well as the tools that they use, from their pen and pencil down to the physical tools they might use, such as math manipulatives or measurements, things like that. And of course, into the digital world as they start doing a lot of this, either replacing certain things or amplifying or even transforming their experience and what they do within the classroom. So what's really key, though, is that this isn't just an individual practice. This is a team effort. So teachers need to know how they are supported. They need to know how they contributed. It's not just their classroom. But when we start looking at getting beyond the textbook, it's no longer there's a publisher that holds the golden holy grail of here's what must be taught, therefore do your job and bequeath this upon your students. It's now a collaborative use that needs to go multiple directions, not just between the students and the teachers, but the homes and the schools and and of course whatever information platforms that they're using. So the world that we live in is incredibly flexible and it's bi-dynamic, going multiple ways. And we need to start moving beyond this notion of a static, even beyond even the notion of knowledge being like it is fixed. We are still discovering new math. We're discovering new science, and we want students to be a part of that exciting awareness.
Fabulous insight. Thank you very much. Dr. Manju, what's your opinion on this?
For me, going beyond textbook does not mean abandoning the textbook. It just means that we refuse to let it become the ceiling of learning. For us in a strong Cambridge classroom, the textbook is one resource. It's one reference point, but it cannot become the entire learning experience. So in practice, when I look at it, it becomes a textbook where the students are not only consuming information, but they're also able to interrogate it, apply it, and connect it to real world context. Sometimes even challenge it. That's where going beyond textbooks actually means when I look at it from a Cambridge curriculum perspective. It also definitely means in the educational ecosystem to look at it that it has to move from coverage to construction. Sometimes the textbook limits you and you start looking at it only from a coverage perspective. So a student should be able to compare sources, ask better questions, engage with multiple perspectives and interpret data, probably discuss case studies and build the confidence to think independently. That is the need of the hour. So going beyond textbook today is really about going beyond passive learning. It is about building an intellectual curiosity and the habit of thinking that would endure long after the specific content is forgotten.
Fabulous. Thank you. You use my favorite phrase of interrogating information. I always get excited when I hear that. Dr. Min, what's your take on going beyond the textbook?
Me, right? I mean, you're asking. Okay, so sorry. For me, going beyond the textbook is to move away from the content delivery. It's really important in our context where we are a bilingual school. We need to integrate the Cambridge learning objective with the Vietnamese national learning objective at the same time. So basically, the teachers having less time, but they need to cover the same learning objective. So moving beyond the textbook, helping the teachers to to apply the knowledge into the real world context, but also asking them to redesign the learning experience of the students. And if we just focus on the knowledge coming from the textbook, we are actually training our students to compete with AI, for example. But in order to going beyond the textbook, asking the student to go to not only the physical world but also the digital world, helping them to get the skill set that they can be success in the futures. So this is my sharing about that. Why we need to move beyond the textbook.
Yeah, redesigning learning experience is very important. Thank you. Mr. Patrick, what do you think about this, moving beyond the textbook?
Yeah. Hi. For generations, textbooks has been the cornerstone of education systems like Cambridge schools. Traditionally, I believe they serve as primary sources of structured knowledge, carefully curated, standardized, and aligned with curriculum. From the early days of the printed manuscript in mass-produced books especially in the 19th and 20th century, textbooks usually represent authority, consistency, and academic rigor. So in the Cambridge context, they became especially important for maintaining global standards, ensuring that students in different countries could access the same high-quality content and prepare for uniform examinations. However, textbooks have always had inherent limitations. They are static, often slow to update, and constrained by physical space. Once printed, information cannot be easily adapted to new discoveries, emerging perspectives, or individual learning needs. So historically, this rigidity was accepted as a trade-off for reliability. Yet in today's fast-changing world, especially in the 21st century, where knowledge is evolving rapidly and learners are increasingly diverse, relying solely on textbooks is no longer sufficient. So the rise of digital tools and AI is transforming this landscape. These technologies allow education to move beyond the textbook by making learning more dynamic, personalized, and interactive. Unlike traditional books, uh, digital platforms can be continuously updated, ensuring students engage with the most current information. This is particularly important in the fields of science, technology, and global studies, where developments occurs frequently. So AI-driven tools enhance personalization in ways textbooks never could. Adaptive learning systems can analyze the students' strengths and weaknesses in real time, offering tailored exercises, explanations, and feedbacks. For example, if a student struggles with a specific mathematical concept, the system can provide additional practice of or alternative explanation until mastery is achieved. This individualized approach supports diverse learning paces and styles, something a single textbook could never accommodate.
Well, thank you. That historical context is vital.
Mm.
Dr. Wan Noor, what do you think about this?
Ah, yeah, going beyond the textbook today, meaning that we are shifting from content consumption to knowledge construction. Okay, I've been in both centuries, the 20th centuries, now the 21st centuries. In the 20th century, we are dealing more all the time. We are dealing with the textbooks only. We seldom use the technology, but now in the 21st century we should involve our students using the real world problems, interdisciplinary learning, and also digital tools to deepen their understanding rather than just relying solely on the static information. And traditionally, as mentioned just now by Min, I think, textbooks provided a structured knowledge. Okay, but today we know that our learners are living in an information-rich environment, so we should uh, uh, expose them to the needs of questioning. They should know how to questioning, to do inquiry-based learning, to analyze and to apply the knowledge in a dynamic context so that they can understand the subject more better. Okay, with the rapid advancements such as especially now in the AI environment and access to the information, our role as the educators and the role of education nowadays is no longer just delivering the content, but we have to develop as a teachers and educators, we have to develop critical thinking, creativity, and also adaptability. And to shift from the textbooks to the beyond textbook, we have to make our students know how to navigate complexity. We have to make our students know how to evaluate the information and how to innovate. So that is, I think, be using technology, using digital tools are very, very important nowadays. In fact, teachers are also one of the uh, um, uh, person that we as teachers we have to know better than our students in order to go beyond the textbook. Yeah, that's from me.
I think that's a very wise and interesting take. Thank you very much. And finally, Ms. Rutdiana, what do you think about moving beyond the textbook? Just going to check the microphone there.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I agree with Dr. Manju. When we say beyond the textbook, we are not saying that the textbook is no longer important. It is still a valuable resources, but it should not be the driver of learning anymore. So in practice, it starts from the system level is through curriculum policy. So we intentionally design the learning not only to be competency based, not only coverage based. So it's not like only, oh, we're finishing the book. That's not the goal anymore. So we have to ensure the students can think, apply, and transfer the learning. Then it becomes visible in the classroom through approach to learning. Next year, we want to introduce to our teachers for 5E model approaches like engage, explain, explore, elaborate, and evaluate. So, and then we embed into inquiry-based learning where students ask questions, and also problem-based learning where they tackle real issues, and project-based learning where they created something meaningful. So the learning don't stop at this end at the answer. It lead to output, action, and impact. So alongside this is I learned from the last Cambridge school conference that we also emphasize oracy. This is the other skills beside literacy and numeracy that we need to develop on our learners because they need to articulate the thinking, reason aloud, and engage in a meaningful dialogue. So now, today also, we already know that school doesn't need, they don't need the school to access the informations. They can find the information everywhere. So what they need the students need is the ability to make sense of it, question it, and use it well. That's where technology, especially now is AI, becomes a partner. But AI only becomes powerful in the hands of students who are metacognitive, who can think about their thinking, evaluate what they see, and make informed decisions. So ultimately, beyond the textbook means we are developing learners who are not just knowledgeable, but intentional, reflective, and capable of navigating a world where knowledge is everywhere. And if we don't move beyond the textbook now, we risk preparing the students for a world that no longer exists. That's my
Wow,
opinion.
that's a fabulous thought. And I think, yeah, what you said there, learning doesn't stop at the answer. I think that's an absolutely vital understanding for these days. Laura, would you like to offer a summation of that fantastic round?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I've learned the general trends of what I've heard and taken some notes about this ceiling of learning, as Dr. Manju mentioned, and having to go beyond that ceiling of learning. And a number of our panelists have talked about, yes, we have the textbooks as sort of the base of the curriculum and the objectives, I think Patrick had mentioned, that need to be delivered. However, in this age, we are aware, and at Britannica, I'm talking to Cambridge educators continuously across the world, that educators feel that yes, we are able to impart knowledge through the curriculum, through the textbooks. However, there is a whole digital world out there and a wealth of information that the students have access to in school and out of school. And what educators are saying to us is, how do we navigate that ourselves? Because this is something that's been around a little bit, the AI and the information world. But it is, how do we navigate in this world so that we are making sure that the knowledge is imparted, that is in alignment with the curricula that we're delivering, and that we can ensure that the quality of the knowledge that the children are accessing through the world of AI is going to genuinely enrich their learning experience. And so we have talked about the importance of that extension of knowledge beyond the textbook. And now just drilling down a little bit more in terms of schools that you may, dear panelists, be working in or working with. For the teachers, what would that look like in terms of extending knowledge beyond the textbook, say, in schools or in classrooms? We did mention some inquiry-based learning, some project-based learning. Can you offer any other examples and a balance potentially between what we call the real world experience and the hands-on application and then the use of, say, AI? So what do you believe that schools are doing to extend that knowledge across the Cambridge world? And if you have any specific examples of how that knowledge is being extended beyond the textbook, that would be valuable for our viewers. So maybe potentially we start the other way around. Let's see if we go in the middle. Maybe Dr. Min, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, so like in my school context, where like we need to integrate between the Cambridge and the national curriculum, we really need to utilize our time effectively, because if we don't like make use of our time, the teachers may not be able to come like to deliver all of the learning objective required by Cambridge and also by the national curriculum. Of course, we mentioning about our pedagogy. We need to extend our learning beyond the textbook by pedagogy. Our members here sharing about project-based learning, inquiry-based learning. Asking the student to learn things beyond the textbook. But I think like in our school context, we also utilize tools, for example, AI tools. But it's really important that like AI tool used responsibly, not to make not only to make learning faster, but also to make learning deeper. So, for example, we are asking the student to use AI. We have a like AI tutor supporting the student to study the Cambridge Mathematics IGCIT, for example. We are not using the AI tutor to make learning faster, but asking the student to use AI tutor to go deeper to their understanding, asking like using the prompt to make them understand the concept from from diverse perspective, and also like using AI tutor to explain how to they can like answer the to explain the math concept, um, uh, like to asking them to answer the question as well. This is some one of the way that we are using for our school context to make sure that like we can extend learning beyond the textbook. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Min. Yes, and like the AI tutor is an evolving tool indeed for deepening conceptual understanding, particularly at the higher level. So thank you for sharing. And Diedrich, would you like to share your views on how in schools, and I know in your role that's quite pivotal, extending knowledge beyond the textbook?
Thank you. That's a great place for me to launch off. So, for context for everybody, my role is a full-time position, a bit as a mediator between the teachers, the and technology, the IT. I'm sort of the front-facing side of how does the technology and the teaching pedagogy intersect, and what practices do we really need to make sure we're focusing on. So a lot of my role involves a lot of coaching, a lot of policy writing. I'm oftentimes sitting down on to have a call with different vendors or different organizations when it comes down to if a law gets updated or a product gets updated, we need to make sure that it's still fitting within our needs. And oftentimes I'm going in, I'm evaluating the impact of, well, we've purchased our one devices for these years. Are we getting what we need out of it? And is it because of a deficit of the hardware or software that we have, or is it because we don't have the training in place? So a lot of what I do is sort of going back and looking at what we're asking teachers to do, looking at what teachers are asking for admin or for budget, things like that, and just trying to advocate as many ways as I can. So in terms of the question of what does it look like day to day for teachers and learners? One of the biggest things I've been influenced by, I would highly recommend everybody to look into the work of Justin Reach over at MIT. He has some fascinating work. His book called A Failure to Disrupt, and it's talking about the role of technology within the classroom and how oftentimes we might pitch technology as something that's revolutionary, changing the world. And a lot of that comes out of the technology companies themselves, or at least, we often use the word hype, but we oftentimes mean there's a lot of excitement and we just haven't had enough time to see if there's evidence. So without going too much further into it, one of the things I think is important is that day to day for teachers and students, they're accessing what they've learned to really domesticate as far as what fits in with their teaching, and they're taking small steps in that way. So for any of our teachers who are sort of joining this conversation and you maybe don't see yourself as the forefront of cutting edge, I'm always pushing the beat boops, I'm always trying different things. You have a very important place in this conversation because you are very much looking at what can I fit in that I understand how it sits in. You are what I call, the rear guard of maybe really making sure we preserve what's working well. So I've used up my time, but essentially what I would like to really reinforce is that there are valuable perspectives from whether it's people at the vanguard of trying new things, or at the rear guard, and you are moving 3 steps from beyond the textbook, or those who are way out beyond and almost losing what the value of the textbook has. And we really need that dialogue happening between both of those.
Thank you, Diedrich. And you make a really important point. I was in a similar role to Diedrich in schools across the globe. And I think that in the world of advancing technology, we as educators at times tend to feel some degree of nervousness and anxiety about keeping pace and integrating. But I firmly believe less is more. Those smaller steps is a key strategy that have intent. And we were talking about measuring impact. But I think the thing is to take it in steps, as Diedrich has pointed out. Thank you, Diedrich, very much for that. And Dr. Wan, would you like to address this question?
Yeah, as you know, I'm from Senior Wrexham. So in Senior Wrexham, we actually focuses on integrating STEM education with the digital technologies and also innovative pedagogies. At the moment, we are also focusing on a new approach. It's actually not a new approach, but a formulation for for Southeast Asia is kind of new approach where we call it the CER. CER is actually the claim, evidence and also a reasoning approach, where we uh, introduce this approach to teachers, to all the maths and science teachers, so that teachers can use this kind of approach where they can integrate the technologies, they can integrate the strategies. That strategies is actually what Rudiana also mentioned just now, the IBL, the project-based learning. So all these comes together in the CER framework, the claim, evidence, and reasoning framework. So these approaches, we have already done it last year to a few schools in Malaysia, and also we have done it in Indonesia, Thailand, Kazakhstan, and also Philippines. We already done this before, and we are going to continue this CR framework with the leaders this year. So for me, this CR approach is quite a successful activity or program where we combine together a few semio centers. We call it semio centers. We have the semio STEM X, semio Wrexham, Simolec, and also from the knowledge of caravan from Kazakhstan, and Innotech from Philippines, where we, as I mentioned just now, we introduce this to teachers so that they can integrate this CER using all the technologies, all the digital tools to teachers. Not only the digital tool, but the hands-on activities are also emphasized in this CER. So I think this is another examples of a good beyond textbook approaches, because we don't focus on the textbook. We don't just don't focus on what we call it just reading, rote learning, but we go beyond that. So this is where I think the CER program is very important, and we are trying to make it a policy for the Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Wan. That's very insightful. And it is a pan-global approach where educators across the
Yeah.
globe and in your region obviously are looking at policy and looking at how to support teachers and guide teachers. So teachers are being thought of on a regional level, on a global level, on a higher level in terms of policy making. And as I said before, this is still taking time, but it's wonderful to see just how much is happening in terms of policy formation to provide a framework for teachers. So thank you. Just to our panelists, thank you for some of the, sorry, not the panelists, attendees. Thank you for some of the questions that are coming in. And we will be definitely reserving time for Q&A. So please do keep those questions coming. And Dr. Manju, in your lovely school, not too far from Mumbai, and I know your school is very innovative under your leadership, some of the things that your school is doing to extend that knowledge, I'm sure our attendees would be lovely to hear and understand.
Just was about to unmute myself. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you
So
are.
when I look at the context from my school, that is at Pravashi International Academy, we're very clear that this happens through design and not by accident. So when the team tries to create learning culture, the classroom is definitely not organized around what page are we on, but around what is the concept and why does it matter and how do we engage with it deeply. So in a day-to-day perspective, when I look at it, it looks different across age groups, but the principle remains the same. So in an early years or a primary classroom, it may mean more experiential learning, the kind of questioning routines that we implement, a very conscious effort towards play-based exploration, visual prompts, and a very conscious effort also towards a talk-rich classroom. As Southeast Asia, we're all non-native speakers of the language of English. So it is important that we develop a talk-rich classroom so that the opportunity to develop the language capacity is also taken care of. So in the middle and secondary school, when I look at it, it increasingly becomes more like an inquiry task, a research-based discussion, which is where we use the platform for Britannica also. Interdisciplinary links are very easily embedded into our projects. The kind of reflective writing that is expected in the language, whether it is in English or our local languages of Hindi, Marathi, or the foreign languages that we offer from French, German, the kind of source analysis that is expected, especially for our global perspective. And herein comes our approach being very strongly embedded across PBL, that is project-based learning. So as a Cambridge school, we already have a curricular framework that values understanding over rote reproduction. So our teachers are genuinely encouraged to use the textbook as a launch point and then extend it through discussions, comparative examples, contemporary context, and then inbuild a digital research, proficiency. So in that, we also encourage peer collaboration. We try and ensure that our projects are collaborative in approach, but independent reflection is also something that we work very strongly with. So from a digital platform, if I look at it, we have a reading platform. Through the critical thinking work that we do at our GP, we implement a financial literacy program across there, and also the digital tools come in. So it's an interdisciplinary project approach that we do, but fundamentally, we are very strongly working towards a research-rich student initiative that contributes to it. So a student begins to understand that learning is not confined to a chapter. It is connected to society, it is connected to decision-making, it is connected to communication, ethics, and the real world. That's the major shift that we are trying to do. Hence, my effort with my team is to make them realize that they're not primarily a deliverer of content. They are designers of the learning experience. And that is the powerful shift that we work using digital technology, looking at beyond going the textbooks.
Thank you, Dr. Manju. And there's just a few things I'd like to pick up on what you've said, which are absolutely essential for educators navigating this world. It's the notion of, not by designing, not by accident. And I know that speaking in a lot of the places, schools I speak with, in conferences I speak with, one of the main challenges is integrating the AI with intent. And as we'll get into the impact and measurement of impact question in a moment, seems to be a flurry whereby educators will have digital ecosystems that might not be coherent, they're not intentional, they're just experimenting and adding on. And one of the challenges that, and we'll talk more about challenges that Cambridge educators are facing is, technology is an add-on rather than by use in intent. And another, which Dr. Manju has raised, is the interdisciplinary learning approach. Cambridge traditionally is subject-driven, subject-based. However, there are global perspectives in the curriculum driving this more STEM approach of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary learning. And when I've integrated technology into schools across the globe, the use of technology, including AI, naturally drives those interdisciplinary connections. We cannot isolate information. It's interconnected and one builds on the other, which then adds to an additional skill set of our educators to be able to navigate that. However, again, we will talk to that. Thank you for an invaluable contribution, Dr. Manju. It's absolutely critical that educators understand that the points that you've raised. And so I'd like to go to Patrick, if you'd like to contribute to that question in terms of going beyond the textbook.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. Like I mentioned before, textbooks have this, what you call, physical space. Yeah, constrained by physical space. Whereas, when you use digital tools like AI or any other digital platforms, you're able to use multimedia resources like videos, simulations, and interactive models. So this helps move learning beyond the textbooks. So, and this experience actually deepen understanding and make learning more meaningful compared to just reading a static text alone. So because I've experience in teaching English, science, and maths. So I also believe in one more thing, exposure. So when you are teaching beyond the textbooks, you're actually exposing students to a lot of different concepts, to a lot of different solutions. It's like thinking outside the box, or I would like to say thinking outside the textbook. Because if we don't expose students to this, they are never going to know. Because there are a lot of students, maybe because of the socio-economic divide, based on their resources available at home, the environment they're growing in. So when we limit it to just teaching, using the textbook alone, we're actually limiting how much they can grow and learn, and how much their knowledge can deepen. So that's why I believe it's important that we expose students to more learning models, how to stimulate their thinking, creativity, so that we're able to move and transition beyond the textbooks. I'm of course speaking from a 21st century perspective, so I do not know how was it like in the 20th century and before. So that's why, because I've thought, I've based on what I've learned in the university and all, they always taught us to exposure is most important thing. That's how we bridge the divide, make sure that students learn more and they become better leaders in the future.
Yeah, fantastic, Patrick. Yes, and you've raised really good examples. The use of simulations and other learning models. The technology can provide for that. And again, it's with intent. It's understanding when to insert the simulations and the different learning models. Absolutely. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about what you said about the environments at home. And I used to talk to educators quite a bit at classrooms without borders, right?
Yes.
So the classrooms don't have these borders anymore, and we have the tools now to have a globally minded advancement of students. And this is just a fantastic opportunity and something we will and continue to navigate competently as it develops. And Rutiana, if you would like, and I see one of our students of the future. Is that your lovely daughter? Welcome to sit with
Yes.
us.
Sorry,
And
sorry.
that's okay, not a problem. Not a problem. I'm a mother as well, and I remember the day. In terms of just a couple of quick examples, if you can, your opinion on extending the textbook. We've heard about simulations and intent and interdisciplinary learning, AI tutors, getting the balance right in terms of human capability versus using these tools to extend knowledge. If there's something, I mean, a lot's been said already. It's always hard to go last, but if there's anything more you'd like to add to that, we'd love to hear it.
Yes. Uh, in our school, I will just give you some example. The first is science in the lower secondary. So
Mm,
instead of stopping at learning ecosystem from the textbook, the students are given a real challenge. How can we improve environmental sustainability in our school? So
mm,
every week they are asked to collect the fruit peel. We make the eco enzyme, and from the product of the eco enzyme, we splash to purify the water in the river, and working together with the local government in the environmental. That's the project based learning. Yeah, the problems that help to nowadays, the global warming and etc. And they have to connect to the real world, like the sustainability of the environment. And with the mathematics, in Asia, the parents still like things. The mathematics is like, the tiger mom. That's mathematics is the most valuable maybe, yeah, for them. So the mathematics we use to adaptive learning platform. Why? Because some for primary and for secondary. Because why we found like some students, even though that we know that Asian mathematics is the best, but some students is still very um have the fear to learn mathematics. So
yes.
by doing this platform and converting like put into the questions of the mathematics in the daily in the competitions between boys and girls in the primary, and then like a games, then it can motivate them to learn mathematics, like practice the questions like that. And I agree with the global perspective. The global perspective, and now Cambridge also have humanity. We try in our school, we try to combine with the global perspective, and then the national social studies. So we try to do the research using now is using the AI, but the most important is uh, teaching our students the prompt engineering, because they
Fantastic.
need to reflect, to evaluate. Sometimes AI answer is also not right. They need to confront. No, I think I saw it this one. So they also need to interpret the data that they get from the other resources. So that's what we want for our students. So they not only accepting the answers, So they learn to question also. They learn that the most important is the prompt engineering. So it is about ensuring that every learning experience leads to applications, reflection, and the real meaning. That's what I thought.
Thank you very much, Ruthiana, which leads very, very easily and smoothly into our final question. And for our attendees, we do have about 15 minutes left of the webinar. We'll go through this final question, which is a critical question, and leave time to answer your questions. So please do, we're encouraging you to ask more questions. We may run a few minutes after, over, because we want to make sure we address everyone's questions. I'm going to flip the next question a bit, because what Dr. Rutiana and I think all of us are leading into is about intent and impact. The digital tool is only as good as the impact that it has on the acquisition of knowledge beyond the textbook. And two parts to this question is how we can measure or evidence that digital tools being used in schools, how are we evidencing that they're having a positive impact on knowledge acquisition? So I'll just start with that first part of this question. And I don't know if, I can't remember who's not gone first yet. I want to be fair. But perhaps, Dr. Manju, would you like to go first? Because I don't think you've gone first yet. If you unmute Dr. Manju.
Sure. Am I audible? Yes. When we look at impact, Laura, I would say the impact has been promising, certainly, but only where implementation is intentional. That's what the conversation has been till now. So technology by itself does not produce higher order thinking. I think we can all easily agree to that. It is always a good pedagogy that is going to do the trick, and technology can certainly help to amplify it. So we have seen digital tools help in several ways. They can improve access to wider reading, explanation. It certainly can support confidence in independent exploration. It allows students to revisit concepts with greater autonomy, right? And in some cases, they have improved engagement because students are interacting with material more actively rather than passively. And they can also support discussion when it is used very well. That is reflection, self-corrections, which are very important in building confidence. But we should also be a little wary of not making inflated claims, right? So we look for evidence in multiple places. The quality of student responses and classroom discourses must have a bridge. We know the problem that the education ecosystem faces with AI tools and the kind of assignments that are coming back using AI tools. How do you bridge that? That is the classroom discourse, is the ability to connect ideas, improved independence in task. Is it seen in the real thinking process, or is it getting restricted to AI tools giving you very refined outcomes? That is not going to move or shift the thinking to a finer thinking process. I think one mistake schools can make is to look only for quick quantitative gains. We must not miss the deeper qualitative shifts that are equally important, is something that all schools need to look at it. So, for example, when a student becomes more confident in researching from multiple sources or begins to challenge information more critically, that may not show immediately in a single test score. So don't associate success only with a single digit score that you're looking at it. But it is very significant academic development that we need to see. So in Cambridge context, where analytical depth and application matters, those shifts are highly relevant.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Manju. And I agree. It's not looking at one particular result in isolation, but in context of overall what it can achieve. Not always easily measurable. However, bigger picture, we can definitely see progression in certain knowledge acquisition and skills and abilities. And Patrick, would you like to share with us in terms of
sure. So measuring whether digital tools positively impact knowledge acquisition requires a combinative of quantitative data, qualitative insights, and thoughtful comparison with traditional methods. So as at Cambridge schools, I think we cannot rely on a single metric. Instead, we must build a holistic evidence-based solution. So one key approach is assessing learning outcomes through formative and summative assessments. So digital platforms also often provide real-time quizzes, adaptive tests, and progress tracking. I think that's a good source of us to measure outcomes and to know whether is it having a positive impact in our classrooms. So by comparing student performances over time or against cohorts using more traditional methods, then we as educators can identify improvements in understanding, retention, and application of knowledge. So, for example, consistent gains in 10 score or faster mastery of concept can indicate positive impact. So, another important measure is our actual learning analytics. So, of course, this one we can use digital tools. So, they can actually generate detailed data on student engagement, such as time spent on tasks, completion rates, and patterns of errors. So, these insights can actually help teachers determine whether students are actively engaging with content and whether misconceptions persist. So through this, we can track them easily. Are they really progressing, or is there something holding them behind? So increased engagement combined with improved accuracy often signals effective learning. So of course, qualitative evidence also plays a crucial role. So we as teacher, we must observe in the classroom. We must do a lot of observations. Are the students really interested? Are they really engaged? And also ask them feedback. I believe two-way communication is important. Therefore, student feedback to understand what their learning styles are, what they prefer, how they want to learn. Because as we know, different children have different learning style, learning pace. So it's hard to use a one solution fits all approach. So we need to be varied or diverse in that sense. Um, Additionally, also we can compare pre and post intervention data to strengthen evaluation. So we can actually conduct baseline assessments before introducing digital tools and then measure the progress afterwards. So I think this will help isolate the impact of technology rather than external factors. And yeah, that's all I'd like to add to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Just one thing, two things I want to touch on. It's about the children actually articulating what they're learning, and that's the authentic voice of the child, getting them to explain what that information, additional information means to them. And I think the idea of a pre-test, post-test, one thing I did in a school when I was in Cairo was I had some classrooms where they weren't using the technology, same lessons, same objectives, and some where they were, to sort of see the difference that it made. So something as simple as that, pre-test, post-test, and then comparison groups and control groups to see whether or not it is actually having the sort of intentions that we'd hope for having impact. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Min, would you like to share your views on this?
Yeah, I agree with like Patrick about, like we should use the assessment data, especially with baseline assessment to evaluate the cognitive ability of the students, to see whether we can make any progress, with the use of AI, with the use of the tools. We also like, come to the some qualitative evidence, which is like coming to the lessons, to observe the teachers about their lessons and see how the student react. And I a fan of visible learning. So when it comes to the lesson observation, we're not looking at teachers. We're looking at the student, see whether they can explain their thinking process. By seeing whether they can explain their thinking, is how we can evaluate the use of the impact of digital tools in our lessons. But also like we also like, I mentioned about AI tutors, our teachers having an access to our dashboard, and teachers can see what the questions, the prompt the student are using. We are saying that like we need to teach the student about prompt engineering, how to ask right questions with AI. But teachers need to have a tool to monitor it and to oversee the question that the student use and ask with AI, so that they can monitor the learning process. And it's really important that like, Rudana mentioned about metacognitive learners, right? It's really important that we make sure that the student think about their thinking. So using AI is not to make learning, not only to make learning faster, but also need to make sure that we are using AI to deepen their learning and their thinking as well.
Absolutely.
So this is the thing that we have to combine between the qualitative and quantitative data in order to make sure that we can, make sure that we use digital tool effectively.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Min, and fully agreed. We're just aware of time, and we do have some questions for our panelists. So I don't know if we do want to hear from Diedrich, Dr. Wan, and Rutiana, if you're able to give your response in about a minute each, if at all possible, maybe building on what others have said. Diedrich, would you like to expand on any of these points?
I'm going to start my response with a question, and this is going to be for you, Laura. Are you going to be following up with the second part of this? Because I feel like I can't answer this first part, or my answer is best couched within looking at the second part of the question. So if you would like, I can come back. You can go and move on to the other panelists, and I'll just save this response and I'll couch it within my next one.
Okay, well, I was going to summarize the second part, but what I was going to
Or
sake
I
of
can start right
time,
on
I
the
was
second part, which is about the challenges.
the
Yeah.
challenges. If Rutiana and Dr. Wan and Diedrich would be comfortable maybe commenting on some of the challenges, that would be great. And I'll give an example, and that would be our final question. And thank you, Diedrich, for pointing this out. When I speak to Cambridge educators and having integrated technology in schools myself, there were some key challenges involved in the integration of technology with impact. Those included teacher competencies, student competencies, but first and foremost, what Cambridge schools are telling us is the reliability and trustworthiness of the information that digital tools provide, with AI to potentially having misinformation, disinformation, and hallucinations. These are the challenges that are presented to us through educators. Are there any additional challenges that you have come across in the integration of tech within the context of your school? So, Diedrich, would you like to kick off on that response?
Okay.
Okay,
Conversation.
okay. Right.
Diedrich?
This
Yes.
conversation is incredibly broad, complex.
Mhm.
And the biggest thing that comes down to it really is that the fact of the school is a community-based institution and an organization built not only of the people, of the colleagues and things, but also the parents and families that support the
Mhm.
students. And so oftentimes in terms of trying to make this work, and I'll try to do this as briefly as I can, but one of the biggest things to be aware of is that whatever tools that we're using, oftentimes these have not been built with the student's best interest in mind, number one.
Right.
And so if we are using, for example, even something as simple as email was not built for a child in mind.
Mhm. Right.
So there's a lot of things to be aware of when it comes down to mindfully integrating things within your practice. So number one, it's what tools are you using and how are you adapting it within your classroom? Number two is how are you including the families and parents within this discussion? Because too often we look through the parents to see the child.
Right.
And they don't, not only do they not get a voice, but we don't know how that was said. I'm really glad you mentioned things like the teacher training, because research is showing us one of the best ways of helping encourage students to actively assimilate technology use is by observing teachers confidently using it, or at least open-minded in how they're approaching and learning new skills. So the grit of a teacher and the resilience and the openness of going back into the technology scope really help. My only closing comment is technology isn't its own thing, in my opinion, even though that's my
Mhm.
job title. But anyway, it's really
Mhm.
just a curved mirror that's reflecting back all the other practices. If you have a classroom full of snarky behavior, they're going to be snarky online, just like they'll be snarky
Yes.
offline. You can't fix
Yes.
that
Yes.
without the other. So all I would say is, what are the great things of technology? What can it offer? It can offer things like the data literacy and integration, collaboration, customization, the feedback cycles, and like iterating new things and trying new things and like having that where you can make comments and it can all happen digitally and that communication and self-expression. We all know the amazing benefits. But at the end of the day, we also need to start this as a conversation within the community. You said, I forget your exact phrase, but basically that the technology is only as strong as, and I forget your exact phrase, something along the lines of
The
maybe the
quality of the
information,
information. Yeah.
quality of the information. I don't know if I'm going to challenge that or as much as offer the other side tension that helps support that is the integration is only as strong as the community that it's situated within. And so a lot of what I
Absolutely.
do is community based. So I'll leave it as that, just saying the challenges that whatever your challenges are having within the community based, those are going to be reflected in. So continue to pursue excellent teaching, excellent community relationships, and just be aware that's going to be reflected within. And it's never an isolated conversation within itself.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You're absolutely right. It is a community. Dr. Wan, maybe if you could offer potentially one challenge. I realize our participants are still with us. And we'd like our participants, if they may, just to stay with us for a few more minutes as we wrap this up, and thank you for your attendance. And Dr. Wan, could you think potentially
Yeah,
one challenge?
yeah. Actually, the most challenging that we are having right now is the teachers' capacity building for teachers, actually. For school not only for maybe Cambridge is different, but in other schools in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia, our most problems is nowadays is on the teacher readiness and training. So teachers has to
Mm,
continuously professionally develop themselves to know how to integrate effectively all the digital tools that we are introducing to them. Yeah, that's for me.
Thank you for being so prompt. Thank you. And Rutyana, would you like to add a point to all the wonderful contributions we've had?
Yeah. For me, the challenge is time and design. Because,
Yeah,
in this busy school environment, that actually textbook is help us with the time. But if we beyond the textbook, so the time is really a real constraint. Yeah,
right.
because uh, we and also how we design a high quality task that genuinely promote higher order thinking, then integrate the digital tools meaningfully. Because Cambridge need sometimes to prepare the students for the exam also. And also for the using of the digital tools, it has to be consistent across classrooms,
Right.
not like just frequent or whatsoever. That's why for me, the base of all these conversations, each school needs to start to develop their own AI policy and the students'
Absolutely.
declaration as well. Because the
Right.
students need to
Absolutely.
declare also stuff when they use AI and when they use their own thinking and how they collaborate between AI and themselves. That's from me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Rutiana, sorry, apologies. Yes, and it is about a pedagogical approach to integrating these tools. It's about having the policies and the intent, the competencies involved. It's a very much a strategic mission, but a very exciting one. And now we'd just like to thank our panelists very much for these contributions. And we have a couple of questions. One from Francisco asking, and if I get this right, is it possible to deliver Cambridge learning objectives using OER has been typed.
Open open resources, I think, what
Mhm.
Yeah,
Would
open
somebody like
This
education
to?
resources.
question arrived right when we had our colleague discussing the CRE, or CER, the claim evidence reasoning by Dr. Wanor.
No,
I
no,
would guess that's what the question was about, but
yeah.
by all means, I'm not exactly
Yes.
sure.
If yes, I was wondering the same. If Francisco is still with us, could you clarify in the chat if you meant CER or OER so we can answer the question? And maybe there's another question, maybe while we see if Francisco can type there, we have another question, which was already answered by Patrick. Thank you. And the question was, how are schools working towards integrating the pedagogical approaches via digital learning? Patrick, would you like, and you've written Cambridge Schools integrate digital learning by blending AI tools, integrative platforms, and data analytics to personalize instructions, enhance engagement, and support collaboration. Thank you for that, Patrick. And we hope it was Abhijit that you also heard many more examples from our panelists about the integration. And we have another open education resources. Thank you, Francisco. So again, the question is it possible to deliver Cambridge learning objectives using open education resources? Which of our panelists would like to take that question?
I would like to try to answer. I think it's
Okay.
possible because Cambridge have framework, right? So in the syllabus or framework, they have the learning objectives. So as long that it's fulfill their learning objective, whatever the resources you can use it. I think for me, yeah, because uh if you talk about Cambridge, they already come with the set of the framework, scheme of work, and then the syllabus. So as long that it's whatever that resources that you use that fulfilled your what is that the learning objective, I don't think that it's prohibited. It's okay.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I agree. I agree with Rudiana because open education resources is any tools for science or mathematics. You can use it as long as it is aligned with the learning objectives. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Again,
would like
with
to speak,
intent.
yeah,
Sorry?
briefly to that. I would encourage.
Oh,
He
Oh dear.
left.
yeah, might have accidentally dropped out with an internet connection.
Oh,
I'd like
really?
potentially. I'd like to thank our participants for joining us in this invaluable discussion today. And we apologize, it's run a little bit over, but as you can see, this is a very, very important discussion. And we will, in Britannica, be looking towards future thought leadership webinars such as these, progressing the topic. We, of course, will be very keen to have your feedback. And I believe when you leave the webinar, there's a very, very short feedback form. If you could please fill out for us, because we're always looking to enhance and enrich these forums for educators across Asia and globally. And to our esteemed panelists, we are so grateful for your valuable contributions and the depth of your knowledge and expertise in sharing with us. And we will be following up with you after the webinar for further communications with you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you. We will be more than happy. Our participants are saying they're looking forward to subsequent sessions. And so, yes, we are as well. And watch this space. And for those of you across Asia, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And again, thank you for filling out the feedback form. And to our lovely panelists, thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure, but obviously we're still live. And yes, and we will be in communication immediately after. For the Britannica team, it'd be great if we could jump to a Google Meet link for a debrief and a
Sure.
follow through. But thank you, everyone. We are so grateful. This has been probably one of the best, and I mean it, webinars, and engagement. And I'm really honored to have been with you.
Thank you.
Thank
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 you.
you.
Thank you
Okay,
very much,
bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.